Time for us to start this week's Shot Clock with Kieran Donaghy. The rules are pretty simple. We get a bunch of topics. We get 2 minutes to talk about all of them. And at the end, you guys at home get to decide who's right. This week, we're also going to have a special feature on concussion with Dr. Enda Devitt. But before we start, I should put to you that your fellow Kerryman has just thrown Tralee under a bus there, Kieran Donaghy. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's easy knowing that I'm not up there this morning, Ger, with that kind of talk. Look, we've all gone to places all over the world, and Owen might have met the wrong guy at the wrong time, but Tralee's a great town. Don't listen to any of that garbage. I'll have it out. I'll bring Owen to Tralee, and we'll give Owen a night out in Tralee under my wing, and yeah, we'll show him a proper night in town. He had a bad experience, and he hasn't shut up about it since.
Let's start this week's Shot Clock. Tommy Rooney wrote a great piece on our website about he going to Croke Park last week and the experience of the soullessness of a Leinster Championship semi-final day where 4 big counties are playing and they get 33,000 or whatever it was through the gates. This is exactly why we need the championship restructure that we've been talking about on this show basically since this show started.
Yeah, it's look, obviously, you know, the reform of the championship, even the president has come out now and kind of said, look, he's looking to get something through. We've talked about it numerous times on the show over the last number of weeks. And, you know, from talking to people, I think just the main thing they have to get right is obviously, you know, making sure this doesn't turn into, you know, that they're not, that if they go with 2 tiers, that the second tier has to get as much publicity, you know. Of course, there's going to be whatever. There could be 14 games on the same weekend. So, like the Premiership in England, everybody's not going to get the same coverage. That's life. That's you're going to pick the best games from both tiers. But I think they have to get it. You know, it's obvious what's working now, or what's happening now is not working. When you look at, as Tommy, and it was a great article because this is going on a while, you know, and the Super 8s was supposed to save that, and the Super 8's big unveil was last year inside in Croke Park, and let's call a spade a spade. It was a pretty empty Croke Park for those games. So like it's definitely something. I think we have to almost make Croke Park special again. You know, keep Croke Park for All Ireland semi-finals, Leinster finals, and National League finals. And because it's just too big for these games, and it's a dead atmosphere. I felt for the Laois and Meath players out there for the first part of that doubleheader the last day. And we also, like, you look at any top business around, Ger, if people aren't coming in the door, what do you do?
Reduce your prices.
Lower your prices. You know, I was going into Nolan Park with Kilkenny and Galway the last day, and I was looking at the sign up on the wall, and it was 25 adults, 5 for the kids. And I was saying, if I go to a game in Tralee, I'd normally bring my mum and my wife and my 2 kids. You know, you're talking up around 85, 90 euros for that day out, which is tasty enough. If that's going into a Galway Kilkenny game where you know you're going to get an absolute rip-roaring game, 2 teams going at it, playing proper hurling. If you're playing into 4 games in Leinster and you're paying that money, you know, we have to look at that. There's so much out there for people to do now, Ger. This isn't this isn't 20, 30 years ago where people had nothing else to do on a Sunday because there was only 2 channels on TV and we'll go to the game because it's not on TV. Now there's so much sport on TV for sporting enthusiasts that can sit down, watch so many sports, get on Twitter, get all this info. Going to a game needs to be looked at on how the GAA do it. And we all love going to games, but we pick and choose our games that we go to that we want to see.
Yeah, no, fair point. I think if you're going to have those games in Croke Park, it should be a 5 or a 10 in. Try and fill the place. Try and make a bit of an atmosphere. Have a bit of a party.
Kids for free.
Stick a concert on or something. Anything you can to try and get the numbers up to make the atmosphere seem worthwhile, because that's going to have a knock-on impact on the players and the pitch. You can kind of tell that they're not into it as much. What's next?
Next is just like, obviously we have Dr. Enda Devitt talking about concussion, but we'll go through some of this with him. But I wanted to talk, you know, even reading, you know, Cormac Ban, who I played against in 2008. It was scary. I'll be honest, it was scary because it just got me to thinking about, you know, we all play club games over the weekends. We have physios, we've got a coach, we've got selectors, we've got, you know, every big, huge back rooms in club football now is nearly it's practically like county football at the moment. But what we don't have in our ranks that we do have at county level is a doctor to games. So just one of the questions I'll pose to you, but I'll pose to probably Enda later on, is how do we try and make this safer for the club player? You know, I had a cousin who got a bad injury playing rugby, Ronan Fitzgerald, Roundy we call him. He got a knee into the head in a warm-up for a rugby game. He was sat down the sideline. He was given great care. We'll put a nice pack over your head. We'll see how you're getting on. But it was in the warm-up, and then the game started. He's sitting down there with a nice pack over. He said the game is on. You know, the coach is trying to coach the team. You know, I don't know what backup was there on the day, but they called my uncle straight away when he got the bang. And when my uncle got there, you know, he said he was sitting there with a pool of vomit in front of him, and my uncle said straight away in his head, his first thing was, this young fella is dying. And you know, he was rushed to Cork. He was up. His head was cut open on the rushing from the ambulance into the theatre to release the pressure on the head. That's an extreme case, and he's good. You know, he's good now. He's studying to be an electrician. He's a great kid. But it did affect him for a long time, and that's the extreme. But just on the normal concussion, like what can we do that makes it safer for the club player is my point. Yeah,
I think it's just about education. It's like constantly banging the drum to the point where everybody's bored listening to it, where you just actually know that these are the symptoms, and this is the if you've got any doubt, somebody comes off straight away. But obviously the message isn't quite out there as much as we assumed that it had been over the last couple of years, because been such a talking point in rugby, and it's a talking point in Gaelic games when somebody like Rory O'Carroll comes on and is clearly concussed in an All-Ireland final, and then it continues to happen in league games after that, where, you know, the message is out there that this is not as big an issue in the GAA as it is in other sports. But actually, you know what, I think it is, and it's a big issue in soccer, in club soccer right around the country. One of the lads at work here got a ball to the face recently and was like, I'm grand, went out and played, got another bang to the head, and realised afterwards that he had been concussed, but he played on through the first concussion, and that was the issue, that nobody in the team said, no, that's a suspected concussion, off you go. So
but that's the ultimate issue though, Ger, isn't it? Like, I'm the club player, I'm getting a bang, I'm down on the ground, it's a big game, I'm getting up. Of course the player is going to want to play on always, and you know, like you'd have fellas going, oh no, he must come off. Oh Jesus, I'm fine, I'll play on. That's the tricky part.
Yeah, exactly. We'll come back to that a little bit later on. So the NBA finals have turned out to be a fairly amazing, as dramatic an NBA finals as you could hope for. It's 3-2 or 2-3 depending on where you are and where you stand at the moment. So we're looking at Game 6 overnight tonight. There's a good chance it's in Oakland. There's a good chance that it's going to go to a Game 7. Where do you stand now? Is it still the Raptors to lose, really?
It is. It's the Raptors to lose, but I have a slight fear for them. I think Golden State will win a tight one tonight, and I just fear for them slightly if it goes back to Toronto for a Game 7, because they don't just have the pressure of a city, or they don't just have the pressure of their own fans. They actually have the pressure of a country on them. And when you have the pressure of a country on you, and you're going out playing a team that have what looks to be a fairly healthy Clay at the moment, even though he's not 100%, but he looks fairly good. He's put up good numbers in these two games. And Steph's the guy that can go out and get 40 any night he wants if he shoots enough shots. You have Draymond Green, you have Iguodala. They're the four that won 2 championships for them. Yeah, they threw in Durant, and then they threw in Boogie Cousins this year. Now you lose Durant, which is in itself a travesty, because he's obviously ruptured the Achilles, and you know, it's a really tough injury for him, and you know, it's a tough one to come back from. But I do think he'll come back, because he isn't like LeBron. You know, he uses his length and his skill and his nous more than his power and his explosion like LeBron would. So, but yeah, look, it's going to be unbelievable. It's been a great series because it's had everything. It's had the injuries, it's had the comebacks, it's had fellas going down in games. Toronto should have finished the deal the last day, but they didn't, and they could pay the price. I know you picked the Warriors from the start, and I know I went with the Raptors for argument's sake in the series, but to be honest, without KD, it kind of takes away from the series, because really with KD, the Warriors probably win this easy, but without him, they could struggle. But tonight is just massive. Tonight is pivotal, really, on who goes on and wins this.
Yeah, I'm worried for the Warriors at this stage. I think obviously you would be when they were 3-1 down. The 3-2 comeback is great, but I think that they rode the emotion of the Durant injury throughout that game. They won't have that tonight, so I think it's going to be interesting. I think tonight's the night that there's a good chance the Warriors lose and Toronto actually get it done with a game early. I want to move on to the US Open. So we're talking golf, and just to remind everybody, this isn't part of our predictions here, but we will do our predictions later on. You've picked the winner of the last two, and we're starting our own Off the Ball Open this year. You're coming to Abu Dhabi with us, so we're looking forward to that.
Well, absolutely, yeah. It'll be everybody's off to drink for the week. It's real serious stuff. Tea time. I can't wait for it.
What are you playing off? You strike me as a bit of a bandit. What are you playing off these days?
I'm off of 12, and I'm playing in the Pro-Am to the Irish Open. So I'm going to try and keep my handicap at 12 until at least after that. But really and truly, I'm definitely going to keep it till Abu Dhabi. You know, there'll be no local competitions played till after I come back from Abu Dhabi. But yeah, I don't have time for the local competitions, unfortunately. But love a good 4-ball, and yeah, that'll be great. But what's going to be great starting tonight, and you know, it goes on late into the night, probably 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock for the next 4 nights. But we'll all be sitting there. We'll all be watching. We'll all be tuned in, because the golf now, we used to have Tiger 10 years ago or 12 years. You'd be kind of going, Tiger will win this. Who's going to challenge him? The majors got not a bit boring, but you were kind of fearful of would Tiger kind of smash it out of the park. No, it's the big guns are out there in force. Rory's back flying. DJ is going to be there. Brooks Koepka's going to be there. Jordan Spieth is back playing well. Cantley's playing serious golf. That's just the big guns, and you still have loads of fellas outside that can win it as well. So it's hugely exciting, and yeah, if we, you know, Pebble Beach is just one of those courses, isn't it? It's one of the ones we would have played in Tiger Woods golf when we were a bit younger, playing a lot of PlayStation, because it's just that iconic. It's got a few iconic holes, and really looking forward to it, to be honest. Yeah,
the US Open is one of those tournaments that you kind of got to tune your mind in to be able to watch it. And once you're in it, it's this amazing ecosystem of really hard, struggling golf, and you're watching the best players in the world hack it around a little bit. And if you can attune yourself to that, then this is an amazing spectacle.
Yeah, and like, you know, I remember when the Irish Open was in Killarney, the pros were saying, oh, we can't put the pin here on 17, and we can't do this and we can't do that, because it could make them look silly if they got too much backspin and ball spinning off the green. And they were almost kind of dictating how tough the course was. I don't know how that works in the game, but they don't get that luxury in the US Open. The rough is going to be up. You're going to have to be accurate. You can't just go out there with the driver and slash it off the tee and hope for the best, which is why I'd be leaning, you know, Tiger's driving in Augusta when he won was questionable. He was in the trees a few times and bounced out and got a few lucky breaks, but you know, you're going to have to be really solid off the tee this week, and yeah, you're going to have to face down a lot of good golfers and go win this, which makes it hugely exciting for us, and you know, guaranteed 4 good nights of television. We're
going to get your prediction in the prediction section after we speak with Dr. Enda Devitt. Before that, though, we got to talk about Chelsea, because they're your team, and obviously at this stage Maurizio Sarri is still technically their manager, but it looks almost certain that he's going to join Juventus. There's just a little bit of negotiating to be done between Juventus, Sarri and Chelsea, so somebody doesn't end up losing money or too much money, whatever it is. So we'll see exactly what happens with that.
I'd say he did all right, I'd say.
Yeah, it's going to work out for Maurizio. Chelsea are like, hang on, we're losing our manager, but we were going to sack him anyway. So anyway,
yeah,
they'll all those rich people will work out who gets the bill at the end of it, and maybe nobody does. But it has left us with this curious situation where, after just one season, Frank Lampard now looks like he's on the verge of getting the Chelsea job. Just one season managing Derby County, and part of me wonders if this is just an emotional decision made by an emotional club with Abramovich pulling the strings still, or if actually this is the right thing to do, because I just can't see that he has enough experience yet in his managerial career. He might have at some point, but this feels like it's way too early for him.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because, you know, I played with a fella like Kieran Donaghy, who retired and went straight into management, and you know, I having played with Kieran and having seen him around the place and seen him in action, when I heard that he'd moved into management, I was kind of like going, yeah, okay, it's the perfect fit. He knows the game, he knows what he wants, he knows his ideas. You know, he'll be fine. Age is age or experience is, and that's fine to go into a GA team in Ireland. But when you're talking about Chelsea, but Abramovich has done this. Abramovich has gone with fellas that have links with the club. He went with Di Matteo. We ended up winning the Champions League with him. He fired him again 6 months later. He's ruthless when it comes to these managers. He thinks that's the way to go. He likes the players being kept on their toes. I think, Chelsea have gotten rid of a lot of managers over the last few years, the last 10 years, after they've won a lot of things. It's even managers have gotten the bullet after winning the league and the FA Cup because they didn't win the Champions League before we won that. So, he's a tough taskmaster. It's a really tough one to call. You Rafa Benitez out there, who did a great job for Chelsea and obviously did a great job for Liverpool and for Newcastle, and is obviously a very good manager and knows what he's about. Would be slightly more old school, I would think, to Frank and Derby played. I watched Derby a good few times this year. They played serious football. So a part to me is kind of looking at a guy that's going to come in with no money this summer. But the overall writing, I'm sorry to see Sarri go. I would have liked to give them another year to embed his philosophy, to embed his players. But I think he kind of got the feeling, I'd say, that he wasn't really loved or really wanted by the club, and I just think he said, I'm just going back to Italy. And obviously the Juventus carrot is out there, which would be huge for a fella that was working in the bank 20 years ago. But Sarri is a super story, and I'm disappointed that Chelsea didn't try and kind of go with it and see what this guy could do. To see him looking at his medal after the end of the Europa League final was a joy to behold. And he's a character, and I like characters in the game, and I think we should be trying to keep characters in the game, and Sarri was certainly one of those. All
right, let's move on to our guest this week is Dr. Enda Devitt, who joins us to talk to us about the issue of concussion, which is back in the news obviously over the last while, and rather than focus on any of the individual cases, Enda, we kind of just wanted to see what it was like at the coalface for you as a doctor, and also kind of if you had any specific advice for GAA club members, rugby club members, or even soccer club members out there when they have an incident which they think a player has had a head injury. First off, you might just talk to us about what it's actually like being at the coalface here, and how aware players are at the moment of the issues around concussion.
Morning, Kieran. Yeah, it's a
morning.
Where do you want me to start there? I know it's constantly in the media, and it's something that there's a lot more awareness of now, but I think we have a long way to go with it. But what was your first question there?
I guess really about the awareness the players have, because I'll talk about like what it's like being a doctor when you kind of discover somebody who you think might be concussed in the middle of a game. But do you find that players are actually aware of this more now than they were, say, 5 years ago?
Yeah, they are. They certainly are. And again, it depends on the level of the game that you're talking about. Like, you'll have vast different levels of understanding when you're talking about the elite levels of the game, say within GAA or rugby, that'll be more conscious of it. But then down to club level, as I think Kieran was mentioning there earlier. But so I think what's hugely important is that we continue the education, but we can keep saying this over and over again, but how do we do that to actually make an impact? And I certainly say any of the teams I would work with, I think it's important that we don't just tell people about that concussion is a significant injury and that, but we need to adapt ways of how do we educate the players that will actually help them make the correct decision. Like I think Kieran mentioned there earlier about, even if a club player or a teammate says to him, "Oh, are you okay? Maybe you should go off," and he goes, "No, I'm fine. But so we need to talk to these players probably in the pre-season. So I'd speak with our players about, okay, this is why we're doing it, not alone. If you sustain a concussion, if you get a second injury, have you the, although rare, potential for much more severe injury or even catastrophic injuries, like we have had in this island. But also, I think sometimes what players will respond to more is data that they're aware of. Look, if I continue to play after a suspected concussion or a confirmed concussion and I don't leave that field of play, how is this going to affect my recovery time? So there's some good data out there now. There's been some good studies done on players who stay on the field even after sustaining a concussion, even without having sustained another injury, be it another knock, but they're just on the field, they're just running around. And some of those studies would have showed the player that was taken off immediately took on average 18 or 19 days to recover. Those who stayed on for even more than 3 minutes, between 3 and 15 minutes, their recovery times extended to 28 days. If they stayed on the field for another 15 minutes, the recovery times went up to 44 days. And I think that's the type of thing, say, I don't know, maybe you as a player as well, Kieran, you listen to more. Like, players now probably, if they're feeling their hamstring is tight or they've had issues with it, they're much more likely to go, okay, right, I might come off here because I might miss 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So players tend to respond to that, but I think probably where we need to change it is to a whole culture shift at underage level, that you don't have that situation where the player wants to play through it because he's used to coming off at a younger age. Like, for example, say at a games development conference in Croke Park there a few months ago, like a perfectly legitimate question by one of the coaches that we're at an under-8s game, under-8s hurling training or something like that, and you've got 2 under-8 players who have a clash of heads, both fall to the ground, they seem relatively okay, and should you take them off? And my answer to that, and I understand it's a perfectly legitimate question, is what we need to be thinking is, well, why wouldn't you take them off? Because we need to listen to the campaigns that the sporting bodies have had there. If in doubt, sit them out. And if you change their attitude at that level, then they're much more likely to take the right advice years down the line. So we probably need to keep chipping away at it. And what we need to remember, the difficulty in a lot of these cases is it won't be obvious initially. The symptoms may well have a delayed onset.
I was just doing a bit of this last night, and I came across this Dr. Karen Liller over in the States. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's got a digital program that asks athletes a number of questions, kind of along the lines of word memory, sequencing, attention, visual memory, reaction time, all that kind of stuff. And it's administrated to all her younger players. This is kind of from 5 to 12, 13 years old. And I'm just thinking of the club player, as I said earlier on when you were tuning in. Is there something along those lines that there could be a program that would be sent out? These questionnaires that these things that are asked the players, rather than just the kind of what day is it, and could we look to get something like that out to clubs? That it's the GA get an app, and the app is sent to every club manager. He gets all the players to fill it in. Yeah. No, that'll be an onerous task if you ask any club manager that they'll have to get these fellas to fill in all these questionnaires.
I know, and then club managers are pulled in all directions. But
is it something that could kind of help in the scenario that if a fella is down, that even a physio could come along? Because we physios at every club game, we don't have doctors at every club game. Yeah. So can the physio come along with this tool, and can he assess somebody, or do you have to be a doctor, or do you have to be a specialist, or do you have to get an MRI scan, basically?
Well, going back to your question about is there something like that available, like that you can get out to clubs? Absolutely, there is. It's here, and like say at inter-county level within Galway, we have a computerized baseline, along those lines on all of our players now, that at hurling and football, that from minor up, and we hope to start rolling that out more. So I'm not sure which tool she was using, but yes, that is available, and not just at inter-county level. It's there. It's available for clubs who want to get it done, and part of the network I work with, the UPMC Concussion Network, is making that broadly available now to whatever clubs want to avail of it. So they can get in touch with those. They can sit a computerized test. Now, it's important to remember that this isn't a tool that you would use sideline-wise to make a decision whether to remove that player or not. These tools are they're very good at bringing some objectivity to it when you're trying to make a decision on when to return a player to play, because every player is different, and they should obviously never be returned same day, and they have to go through the graded return to play protocols like are within the IRFU, within the GA. But what that type of test does, it does give you a much better level of objectivity that then, when you see them 48, 72 hours later, or whatever it be, okay, we know where they're at. We can then make decisions, be it, a week later. Sometimes when I see a player, they might be 6 weeks recovering, and everybody is different. But those tools as well, they're really, really useful for a number of reasons, because they'll give you that objectivity, but also what they'll do, it's important to remember that they're one tool within the whole management pathway. You know, we can't just use those to make a decision based on, okay, your score is okay, now we're going to get you to go back. You still have to go through a graded return to play. Sometimes they might have recovered on a tool like that, but subjectively the player isn't quite there yet, and also vice versa. But the other thing I think that is important, that if that becomes more widely available, I think what's likely to happen then, and again, it is more widely available, any clubs that want to do it, you're much more likely, if you have that type of baseline, to then go down the right pathway, to see the person who can use that tool, who can then who's seen players with concussion all the time, and can then make decisions, rather than, I think probably what's happening on the ground a lot of the times is, okay, that player had a concussion, whether removed or not appropriately at the time, then they end up in A&E departments, or they end up at their own local doctor, and you know, they're just being given this rough time frame. Take 7 days out if you're they're referred to the minimum return to play time frames, or take 15 days out, or if you're a female or an underage player, or if you're in rugby, it's 23 days underage. But that's just a figure that's thrown out there, and their minimum time frames of what's happens at times is they're really for players who are completely asymptomatic and have recovered, and the players getting lost out there that, okay, I'm 15 days or I'm 23 days or wherever I am, I still have headaches, I still have dizziness, and where are these players going then? And that's one of the biggest parts of the network that we're involved in now, is that you know getting these players, you know, assessing them, getting them rehabilitated, because you know there are parts of the individualized different concussions that can be rehabilitated, rather than what's probably historically happening is these people are just being told, if they're still symptomatic, okay, you need to take a month off, 2 months, 3 months, and they're not being rehabbed. And I can imagine yourself as a player, Kieran, if you had an injury and you were told to just take time out of a game, you in your own head you'd be going daft, like, I need to be doing something here, so you need to put a structure on it, you know?
Yeah. And that study was Impact Pediatric, by the way, by Karen Lillier.
That's Impact Pediatric.
But
it's the same system we use.
It probably is. But going back just on my side of it, right? I don't know if I've ever been concussed. I can honestly say that. I've got plenty of bangs into the head. I actually can't say 100% if I was concussed. I know when I was a kid, I got a bad bang and swallowed my tongue, and manager ran in and kind of helped me out there. But it was. You
were concussed if you swallowed your tongue. If you compromised your airway, you were concussed.
Yeah. That was at a young age, and that was at a young age. But in my adult career, I really, in both codes, I don't know, and that's what I guess my question is, Joe. I've got plenty of bangs into the head, but I'm not fully sure I've ever been concussed at senior level. Yeah. Is it blaringly obvious when you're concussed as a person? Is it very easy to see afterwards? If I'm at a club game and I'm playing and I don't have a doctor, and you know, I get a bang and I get up and I play away, is there a way that I know myself, geez, I have to be careful here, I think I got a bad bang today? Like, I know there's the obvious ones, you getting sick and maybe headaches, but is that it? Are they the signs?
Yeah, like, you see, there's various levels of it, and sometimes, say, if you're a doctor or a physio or whatever supervising the game, you'll have the obvious ones, like, you know, say in rugby, that what they refer to as criteria 1, where warrant immediate removal from play, and covering a game, they're the easy ones, you know, the where there's an obvious loss of consciousness, okay, which only 10% of concussions will have, or the person who has obvious ataxia, or they're wobbling all over the place, or you look at them and they're clearly dazed. So those ones are easy. It's the more subtle ones that are quite difficult, you know, to assess, say, as a medic trying to remove them. You know, is there a possible changes? Is there possible behavioural changes? Like, sometimes,
that you say that are hard to diagnose?
Pardon?
Are they dangerous, them ones you're saying are hard to diagnose? Are they dangerous to me as a person, as a player?
Well, you know, what we want to do is, you have the decision about immediately removing that person. And look, things can be delayed and things might get missed. Like, you know, rugby gets a bad rep in relation to concussion in that, like, it's always being brought up in the media. But, like, when you look at the level that they're looking at this in rugby, you know, they have they've got the team doctor, then there's 2 people inside, the immediate care doctor and the match day doctor, who are looking at it on video on 4 angles for possible you know, imbalance, or was that player on the ground a little bit longer and stuff. So, you know, that's again the elite level of the game, but they're like splitting hairs on making decisions on this stuff. But then as we go down the levels, then, you know, stuff is getting missed. You know, we don't know what the long-term effects of it, but I think the conversation we should be having is not about, you know, necessarily primary prevention, but, you know, because there's huge benefits to people participating in sport. There's no doubt about that from a mental health point of view, physical end point of view. But what we need to be doing is, okay, improving coaches, physios, medics' understanding about the possible signs of concussion. The sporting bodies have good campaigns about removing them from play. But now what we need to be concentrating, I think, on is secondary prevention. And, okay, now what do we do to make sure that player isn't going back again until we can be sure they've fully recovered? Because what's often happening out there is that player is going back a few days later. He's not going through protocols. We're not sure he's recovered. Like, there's a good study done there a few years ago with the GPA and Acquired Brain Injury Ireland, like looking at GA players for once rather than picking on certain sports. And they surveyed, I think, mid-teens to late 20s, and 54% of them admitted to having been concussed while playing GA. 44% of them had between 2 and 5 concussions. And the staggering statistic probably on it was that 58% of them continued to play with the concussion, and 42% returned to play before being symptom-free. So we have to change that, because that's what will, I think, practically help us reduce any potential long-term effects of concussion, which we still don't know. There's much more research has to be done there. But what can we do in the interim is just make better decisions on return to play.
Great stuff. Enda, thanks a million for joining us this morning. You've been great with your time. Thank you.
No problem.
That's Dr.
Thanks, Enda.
Dr. Enda Devitt there. I think the one takeaway is that if you have been concussed, it can be rehabbed, and you should definitely do as much research as you possibly can to try and get yourself some help. But I think that whole idea of introducing baseline testing makes everybody aware of the issue. People talk about it. You're more likely to make good decisions if a concussion does arise. Got to do our predictions, and as I've already said, Kieran, just to remind everybody, you've accurately predicted the winners twice of the 2 majors. You've got a 100% record. You're going for the three-peat. Who's going to win the US Open this week?
I'm going for 3 in a row. Give me the...
All right.
I'm not going one of the big guns. There's a bet out. There's a bet there. Like, it's 15-8. There's a bet there about one of them favourites to win. But look, there's no. Our viewers aren't going to make a few bob out of that. So I'm going with Lowry. I'm backing Lowry. I think he's hitting the ball really well. He's come down to 40-1. He was second last week, second behind an absolute scintillating Rory McIlroy, who blew it out of the water. No, he's not going. He can't win anyway, because no fella wins after winning the week before. We know that. So that's Rory gone anyway. So no, I think Lowry. I've talked to a few people, close to him, and he's hitting the ball really well. He's new driver. He loves it. And I think he's got the short game to get around there. And if he can be accurate off the tee and get a good start like he did last week, whenever he's in a tournament, he very rarely lets you down. He's got the stuff, as I call it, inside him. So I'm going to go with Lowry.
Right.
And if Lowry wins and I go 3 from 3, all bets are off for the last major.
Oh yeah. Well, we're quids in if Larry wins. So happy days. 3 out of 4 will be perfect. All right. So I actually.
Who you got?
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong about Rory. I think Rory can win. I think Rory's one of the streakiest golfers, one of the streakiest sports people that you've ever come across in your life. So I think if he's 10 strokes clear last week, there's a good chance he's going to be some strokes clear at this week. I think Brooks Koepka, everybody's actually sleeping on Brooks Koepka to do his own three-peats. Again, it's mad. It's absolutely mad that he's not like clear favourite just to win this. I mean, it is a US Open. So anyway, look, we're completely out of time. So I need one-word answers for Galway against Roscommon in the football.
Galway by 4.
All right, you picked Roscommon to beat Mayo last week. I'm going to go Roscommon just to go against you, and because I think they have a good chance. Also, Limerick tip. I'm going Limerick. Who have you got?
I'm going draw.
Ooh, right.
I'm going draw. I don't know. I can't pick between these two teams. I know it's a one-word answer. I know we're out of time, but it's a draw for me. It's good value.
Kieran, good stuff. Thanks a million. We'll see you for next week's Shot Clock.
You're the man. Thanks, Ger.
Another one in the books. Plenty to get your teeth into there. If you've got any comments for us, you can use the hashtag OTBM.